Just yesterday, cinemas reopened where I live, and I finally got the chance to see James Gunn's The Suicide Squad on the big screen, the place where it belongs and the only place it should be seen for the first time, in my opinion. And let me just say, it was most definitely worth the 3 months wait in order to see it and review it. So let's talk about my thoughts on the movie. Here we go. So before I actually get into the review, I just want to say, as always, this is a spoiler-filled review, so if you have not seen the movie yet, be sure to go onto HBO Max or wherever you want to see this movie in order to watch it first and come back to this video, or if you just don't care about spoilers, continue watching. So yeah, without further ado, let's get on with the review. Here we go. And now let's get started with the first section in this video, which is the good stuff, the things that I loved about this movie. Now the first thing that comes to mind, it's the first thing that I thought at the beginning of the movie, and I kept thinking about it throughout the entire movie, and that is the characters, the team dynamic, and how every single one was given distinct personalities, backstories, and payoff, and they all cared about each other, and they developed an incredible dynamic and relationship with one another. Now in particular, Bloodsport with his daughter, Harley Quinn with, her breakup, Ratcatcher 2 with her father, Polka Dot Man with his mother, etc. Bloodsport has the motivation of he wants to be a better father, and so in order to, make sure that his daughter doesn't go to prison, he joins the Suicide Squad, and, they show him becoming a hero by the end of the movie. Well, not necessarily a hero, but, more of an anti-hero, you know what I mean? And Harley, a lot of people have said that she tried to be, very seductive, or she was kind of assaulted. I didn't get that vibe whatsoever. She's obviously a psychopath. But yeah. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Corto Maltese story per se. I wouldn't say it was bad, it just wasn't one of my favourite parts of the movie. However, once we do have that amazing scene where she kills the man and says, this is a red flag or whatever. That was a great scene. She had a great motivation, she had development, they also carried her development from Suicide Squad and Birds of Prey 2, which I loved. It was just a great scene. And Ratcatcher 2, as I said, with her father. Who the hell would have cared for Ratcatcher 2 had we not have the development that we got in this movie? It's just such a random character no one knew prior to this movie, and they genuinely make you empathize with the character. And particularly in this one scene, with the flashback scene towards the end, where we see Ratcatcher 2 with her father, where he says, if rats can have value, then what does that say about us humans or something? I don't know exactly what it was, but that line in particular really resonated with me, and it made me realize, wow, just because they may not be Superman or Batman doesn't mean these characters can't be well established. Even if it's a lesser known character, there's still a lot that could be done with them, and they executed this perfectly in this movie. And Polka Dot with his mother, as I said, he was a great character too. Wasn't even one of my favorites, but he was already great. They're incredible. I love them so much. James Gunn, you are a genius of how you can make these characters interesting, make them bounce off one another, and create this really fun, vibrant, uplifting, just to create such a great team where they have such great chemistry with one another. However, at the same time too, these characters, or most of these characters at least, are only really good because they bounce off one another. This is why I'm kind of doubtful for the Peacemaker show. Although I know James Gunn is a genius, I don't know if Peacemaker has enough to stand on his own merit, whereas he has a great dynamic with Bloodsport, and they argue, which had a great payoff towards the end of the movie. They have this dynamic throughout the entire movie of them, trying to upstage one another and stuff. And that's established from the very first line, which is, well, you do exactly the same thing I do, but better. And then towards the end, you see Bloodsport versus Peacemaker and stuff, and it's perfectly built up. Yeah, but that is only good because they have each other to bounce off one another. And I don't know, maybe Vigilante, I'm not so ssure, but I don't know if that's enough to hold his own show. But we'll have to wait and see. As I said, everything that was set up earlier on in this movie had a great payoff. You have King Shark and the friendship, I don't know if you call it that, but whatever, with Ratcatcher 2, and, the new Friends storyline. How do I empathize with a man-shark? What? What? I don't even. I loved King Shark. He's incredible. So, that was so cute. I loved him. Oh wow, I can't believe it. Every single character in this movie is incredible. They're all so distinct. They all have the. I can't. Anyway, and they take these same characters that were established in Suicide Squad, like Rick Flag, who everyone was saying was a Republican sort of monotonous character, and they give him his own story and motivation. And, just make him more entertaining too. And Harley, these characters, this is where it stands, and why it's so different from the Suicide Squad is, while James Gunn doesn't completely disrespect the movie that came before it, he takes this serious tone that tried to take itself too seriously when it doesn't really land, and just completely revitalizes these characters in a whole new light. And that's another thing James Gunn does incredible well. It's just team dynamic. You see with the Guardians of the Galaxy, bunch of nobodies, they come together, bam, it's incredible. Moving on to the next thing, which is, I think, the third act in particular, is what stands out to me in this movie. The first act, it gets into the action straight away, and I can appreciate that. It's incredible first act. Second act, I wouldn't say it's the strongest act. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad at all. It was pretty entertaining. But it's obviously just mostly exposition, and that is necessary, don't get me wrong. You need to move the plot forward, but that's not necessarily where the strengths of this movie are. And I think all of that is shown in Act 3. You've established all these dynamics throughout the first 2 acts. You've established the plot. You've had this intrigue and the Starro project being, teased throughout the entire movie, and then you get to that reveal. You get to Peacemaker killing Rick Flag. You get to all of this, and it just comes at you. The action is incredible. Everything. Starro looks amazing, and although Starro isn't actually introduced in the third act, they've done such a great job of building him up that you feel that the moment he is revealed is worthwhile. And as I said, the amazing fight between Bloodsport and Rick, which is by far the best scene in the whole movie in my opinion. I knew Rick Flag was dying. I've read that before going into the movie. However, I didn't know that Peacemaker was the one that actually was going to kill him, and you have this conflict about the government, which I'll discuss later on too. All of that. I said this on Twitter, and I will definitely say it again now. The third act is one of the best third acts in recent comic book movie history. Recent. Empathize that. You've got Dark Knight, and you've got, Endgame and stuff. That's all amazing. But what they did with this movie was incredible. I loved it. Speaking of the action in the third act, the action in this movie just doesn't hold back. I know a lot of people say often that R ratings aren't necessarily really necessary. However, this movie, you kind of need it. I mean, it's in the title, The Suicide Squad. And I think the first movie was also flawed. As I said before, it took itself a bit too seriously, and it's a bit flawed. There's a lot of problems with it. You can see in comparison to that movie that it doesn't hold back. It goes full on in the action. I mean, I never once actually, flinched in this movie. Remember, there was, one scene with King Shark, having just the head of one of the generals in his mouth, and then also when he ripped that person up. Maybe those 2 scenes, I was like, whoa, yikes. I'm not really too flinchy in terms of violence, so that was okay with me. But anyways, yeah, it just doesn't hold back. And I think that one particular scene where they go and attack what they find out to be innocent people later on, the rebellion people, those people, that scene is incredible. You just see them shooting. I mean, you do see some nudity, but yeah. I love the action, and I think the R rating matched this movie perfectly. And it doesn't feel forced in either, the F-bombs or anything. It just seems natural. And speaking of this, the comic book aspects, they heavily lean into, it doesn't, as I said, it doesn't take itself too seriously. All these characters, a lot of them joke around, they don't necessarily have the most serious stories. The plot of the movie itself isn't the best thing about it. I mean, it's pretty generic. Just a bunch of, random nobodies that team up and they go to do some military missions and stuff because they're recruited by the government. That stuff sounds okay, but it's the way that it's executed which makes this movie so distinct. Even with Starro, he's such a random villain from the comics that only James Gunn could bring to life, and it's just so vibrant, and it's just so entertaining to watch. And I was with my friend who actually said, this literally feels like it was ripped out of a comic book page, and it's directly translated on screen. And that's what James Gunn does. He respects the source material, but still translates it in an incredibly entertaining way, and I just love it. Also, as I said about the action, James Gunn tried to use as much practical explosions and props and whatever he could on set, and that makes it feel more realistic rather than just CGI skybeams or whatever at the final battle. I mean, I love Marvel, don't get me wrong, but, it just felt so authentic. Even though it's heavily leaning into the comic book aspect, I think that allows the movie to be less distracting in the sense that it is not, overly done, if that makes sense. And also, relating to it not taking itself too seriously, the humor in this movie is really, really good. Very rarely did I find myself ever really cringing at a joke. Maybe the bag of dicks line at the beach, that was probably one of the only jokes that I didn't really laugh at. James Gunn's sense of humour is obviously very subjective. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to find it inappropriate. And if you don't like it, I'm not here to say that you're wrong or anything. That's obviously just, you can't help what you like and what you don't like. Personally, I've really enjoyed the humour. That just helps the movie so much. As I said, leaning into it's not taking itself too seriously. It's not a serious, dramatic movie. It's just a fun, vibrant movie, and it's so entertaining because of that. And one particularly, the recurring joke of, I think it's Milton, his name is, it's so funny because literally seconds before they said, "Who's Milton?" I said to my friend, "Who's the guy that just died and why should I care?" Because they try to make it into a dramatic thing. And then literally seconds after, Bloodsport said, "Who's that guy that just died?" And Peacemaker's like, "How dare you? Milton's been driving us around the entire time." That was hilarious. I loved that joke so much.
And obviously we have to talk about the star-studded cast. You've got Idris Elba, Margot Robbie, Viola Davis, Courtney, Flula Borg, Pete Davidson, Sylvester Stallone. It's incredible. Who else am I forgetting? I feel like I'm forgetting a lot of people. John Cena, of course. Joel Kinnaman. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below if I've forgotten anyone else in terms of big names. But yeah, it's just incredible. Every single actor matches their character, and they bring what is already an incredible premise and story, and they bring it to life through their acting, through the comedic timing, and everything. It's just incredible. And I think that that's another great pro to this movie. And another pro of this movie is the stakes and the real intense death scenes that you get. You have incredibly funny humor scenes, but at the same time, you have some really impactful moments. And I think that the first act, it gets straight into the action, so you already know, okay, we're on, what's gonna happen, you're already invested, right? And then as soon as they get to Captain Boomerang dying in like the first 10 minutes, I mean, I knew he was dying in this movie, but I didn't know it was that early. I was like shocked. You have like Javelin Man, you have the orange woman, I can't remember her name, sorry. You have Blackguard, I think, Pete Davidson's character. You have all these people just dying, just like dropping like flies, and it's incredibly like, okay, what's gonna happen now? Even though I pretty much knew everything was gonna happen anyways, I was still invested because it was so, everything came out of left field, and I was genuinely shocked. And, you know, I think that that's great because, you know, the first movie was about the Suicide Squad. I mean, in the title, only one person died. Whereas in this movie, everyone, like, you feel like these are real-life events. They're not Supermans. They're obviously not going to be basically invulnerable to anything. These are basically just humans that have a little bit of special abilities. And so, you know, it shows that in, you know, the stakes, and it really ups the antics. I don't know how to say it, but anyways, it really makes you invested. Another pro about this movie is the ideologies that are being questioned. Sure, I guess you could argue that they could have leaned into it more and it's kind of only touched on at the surface level. However, I appreciate it because it does introduce these topics and raises these questions, and they do have a lot of conflict within the movie regarding them. The main one being about, you know, the government and them abusing their power, you know, them kind of lying to the citizens and not wanting this information to get leaked. They obviously were working with Quarter Maltese people, and you have this ideological fight between Peacemaker and Rick Flag at the same time too, which is great because they both have such unique perspectives and they're very interesting. Peacemaker, obviously, no matter what cost, as he says, he's going to try and keep peace. And so if that means, you know, having to torture kids for the benefit of society and the greater good in the long term, then he'll do it. Whereas Rick Flag is more like, no, this is bad, they're torturing children, I'm not going to be a puppet for the government. And then you have that fight, and it feels like it was, you know, worth the outcome of that argument, which is obviously Rick Flag's death. And that was really impactful. Again, they could have leaned a bit further, but I still really loved this interesting dynamic between them. And you also have that great scene regarding Amanda Waller too, whether or not, you know, she should press the buttons, whether or not they're doing the right thing by defying their orders to defeat Starro, or whether or not they should actually kill them. And then you have the military people take her out and stuff. And, you know, throughout the entire movie, the government's a really interesting aspect of it. They have some pros, obviously, but they have some cons, and they tackle it very, very well, in my opinion. And in no way is it misogynistic. I don't agree with you there, Grace Randolph. Oh yeah, that's another thing I've got to say about the government, was like the humor in terms of like the recurring joke about the bedding and stuff. That was hilarious. Viola Davis kills it in this movie. A lot of the actors do, as I said earlier on. And also with the Thinker as well, who was a great character. You know, working with Quarter Maltese people. That was all very, very interesting. It wasn't the strongest element by far. I think the action probably was, along with the characters. But it was still pretty good as well. And also the incredible music. We know, it's James Gunn. James Gunn pretty much can do no wrong with his music. I can't say I know the names of the 80s track he plays. I'm obviously not from that era, but I do love a lot of the songs, and they fit the tone and the vibe. I love Rain, the original song. I've heard that on repeat so much. I love it so much. You know, the whole Rain sequence too is awesome, by the way. And they also have some songs like Everyone's Dying or something, when they're doing that cool montage of everyone that has died and stuff. That was great. Yeah, and you just have all these massive bops. They're incredible, and they already make the tone even better than it already was. And it relates to the story at the same time too. So great job again, James Gunn. And speaking of James Gunn, the director, the direction in this movie and the camera work / CGI is out of this world. And I say visuals and like cinematography pretty much in every single review. And that's because as, time goes on, cinematography gets better and better, of course. I think particularly in this movie, it's not just generic action scenes. It really has some interesting stuff. Particularly when it's Rick Flag versus Peacemaker, which, as I said, is my favorite scene of the movie. And you see some cool shots, like, reflecting off of the Peacemaker helmet, and then you get Peacemaker, what a joke and stuff, that was funny. But, yeah, it's like, it reflects, it's like a self-reflection in a way, of, is he really trying to, do what this helmet stands for, which is peace? Is this worth it? That's what I interpret the scene as. I haven't actually gotten that from anywhere. That's literally my interpretation, most of which I'm coming up with right now. But that's really interesting. And you also have some really cool shots when earlier on in the movie when they're doing that montage I said with who died, and you have like the spinning shots over their head and stuff, and you have like the really cool like Michael Rooker scene with like the ball bouncing around. All these shots, they're really, really great, and the great cinematography. It's really good. And even with just like the transitions, like they feel like it's actually taken out of a comic book panel, and it was really smart and cool the way in which they did it. Like in the first act, the blood from the ocean was transitioning into text. That was awesome, and that just goes to show the real creativeness that James Gunn showed in this movie. And the CGI, King Shark, Starro, they look incredible, and I think that they're definitely being overlooked in this movie, just how well done that CGI was made. However, I'm not going to come up here and say that every single movie is perfect. I definitely think there were, I wouldn't say some flaws, but some things that could have been improved on with this movie. So let's get on to the next section of this video, which is the mixed stuff. Here we go. Okay, so this section is not necessarily stuff that turns me away from the movie or that I didn't necessarily like, but it's not something that I particularly loved either. It's just something I'm kind of neutral about. And so when I say this stuff, it might seem like I'm being negative, but know that it doesn't drag down significantly my thoughts in this movie. It's just something that I think it could have improved on. I just want to make that clear, first of all. And the first thing in this is the non-linear storytelling. Sometimes you might get to a really good moment, like when you get to Peacemaker versus Ratcatcher 2. It's like, oh no, what's going to happen now? And then cut to like 10 minutes earlier with Harley and King Shark and everything, the Team A or Team B or whatever, their perspective. And yeah, so you get to these climactic moments, but then just as you're intrigued as to what will happen, it cuts away to another thing, which kind of takes you out of it. But at the same time too, it's not a bad thing, because then it makes the build up to that, the questions unanswered and everything. It makes everything building up to where the two timelines kind of meet in present, if that makes sense. That was really cool once they do that, but at the same time you're like, oh, I just want to know what happens next, right? Another thing here, first act was incredible, as I said, and the final act was phenomenal. The middle act, as I said, wasn't the strongest. I wouldn't say it was bad, but I think it was slow, but it was necessary, because a lot of it was just exposition, just setting up the story. You're just having like the building up the reveal to Starro and the Quarter Maltese and everything. All that was necessary, but it kind of brings down the movie just a little bit because it's not as engaging. And I also think that the villains and the resistance are kind of meh, and they're just there kind of just to serve the story rather than being there or having any merit. The villains are kind of just generic, no one really cares about them. However, the story and the main characters, they do make up for these characters, except the Thinker, of course, because he's an amazing villain. It was really cool, and I really loved him there. But yeah, they're just there just to move the plot along. And yeah, a lot of people were saying that they try to make you empathize with Starro. I don't necessarily think I got that from this movie. I just knew he was just a bad guy. He just was experimented on. That's all I really took from that character. And also, you probably argue that they kind of just undermined the fact that these Quarter Maltese people are genuine people too, and that like a lot of their population is just dying off because they have stars attached to their face. Sure, valid criticism. I'm not going to deny that. And also the final thing in here, which is the tiniest of the tiniest nitpick, and no way please take this as valid criticism of the movie. This is just a personal preference. The aspect ratio. I prefer 6:9 on a cinema screen. Seeing black bars on the other side of it really takes me out of watching a movie, because it just seems like I'm watching a TV show, and it loses the cinematic quality a movie should have, in my opinion. Really, really tiny nitpick. Like, it's an incredibly well-made movie. Just a really annoying thing pet peeve that I have in regards to movies. Anyways, I actually don't have any major flaws with this movie. As I said, I think it's really, really good. It has a few things that might make it not as amazing as it could have been. That doesn't mean this is bad. Every single movie has flaws, or every single movie has stuff that they could work on. So let's get into the general conclusion in this review. Here we go. In conclusion, The Suicide Squad is an incredibly entertaining and engaging, well-made movie with incredible characters, an incredible dynamic with the team, and it's a very technically well-made movie too, with its visuals, with its music, with its practical elements, with its humor, everything. It's an incredible movie, and with one of the best third acts in a comic book movie ever, in my opinion. I wouldn't go as far as to say this is one of the best movies or one of the best comic book movies. I'd put it up in my top 10, probably, for sure. Maybe my top 1 or 2 for DCEU, for sure. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It gets teared down a little bit because the second act was a bit of a drag. I wouldn't say it was boring, it just wasn't as entertaining, and so I was just kind of like, alright, when are we getting to the good stuff? When are we getting to Star? Well, other than that, I really enjoyed it. It goes full in, the action is incredible, the humor, as I said, everything about this movie is entertaining, and I cannot wait to rewatch it. I feel like it will have just such a rewatchability factor to this movie, and if you can see it on a big screen, please go do that. This movie was quite unfortunate that it kind of flopped financially because, I know it did well critically, but because of the pandemic, obviously HBO Max numbers, and the first movie having bad reception, so people not wanting to go see a sequel, etc. Look, I still recommend going to see it. So in conclusion, I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. I loved it so much, and yeah, that's my review. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'm so sorry that it's 3 months late. It came out in August, and I'm only reviewing it now in October, but I really wanted to see it on the big screen when they reopened, and I'm glad that I did that. So stay tuned for my Shang-Chi review in the next few days. I'm seeing that on Tuesday, and then obviously Eternals at the end of next week, and then Venom 2, and then, of course, No Way Home, and Hawkeye, and What If, and West Side Story, and June, and everything. Okay, I've got a lot to do. Anyways, but yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Be sure to subscribe, turn on the post notifications, join my Discord server, follow me on Twitter, all that sort of stuff. That is it, and I will see you guys next time. My name is Jordan, and I am out. Bye!